When I was drawn to play Dave Mareski in the first round of the Illuminating Rounds 2024 VASL Tournament, I was pleased to play him again, as he's a great opponent, and it also presented an opportunity to take my revenge for my loss against him in the WO16 Wildcat Strike scenario from a previous tournament. For this encounter, we bid opposite sides, and so I went German. While waiting for Dave to be ready to play, I set about assessing my attacking options. This is a complex scenario for the attacker and the defender. I had identified two possible broad approaches, a central attack and a right flank attack. I felt the left flank too far away from the victory buildings. From the outset, I felt a Schwerpunkt was in order, a hard and fast attack to break through at one point. I expected a strong perimeter of fortifications and felt that breaking through at a single point and then spreading out from within that point was the best strategy. These are my early ideas for the attack, playing with the turn 1 movement of my key assets. Central assault, right flank assault. From the outset, I favoured a right flank attack, and then a sweep left, hoping to be behind the main line of fortifications. When Dave sent through his setup the day before our initial play, while it gave no clue of the placement or makeup of the fortifications, I felt that a right flank assault remained the best option. Also, given the Russian reinforcements were coming in from the right, I did not want the latter part of the game to be a fight for the right-hand set of buildings, bolstered by the arrival of the two KV-1s. So, I established a plan to be executed in 4 phases with 3 distinct objectives identified. Of course, this plan did not survive long, but it did prove quite successful initially and allowed me to focus on the execution, which was hard enough given all the moving parts, without having to plan on the run. I divided my forces into 3, the main assault force, the firebase, and taking advantage of flexible entry, a reserve. Phase 1 was to establish the firebase and put the assault force in position to assault the first objective. Scouts were to come on from the right and provide some left flank intelligence for deploying reserves and to adjust the overall plan as necessary. Phase 2 was to take the first objective, the 2 buildings on the right, and with the firebase placed to cut off any reinforcements. Phase 3 was to take the second objective, with the initial assault force, supported by the firebase and some reserves. Phase 4 was to move on the final objective. Let's see how that panned out. The initial phase in turns 1 and 2 went almost completely to script, the German one. Dave's dice were not helping him, and with the covering 45L AT gun out of action, the assault force swept into the right-hand buildings. All Russians on the right broken or withdrawing. I had anticipated stiffer resistance and some mines by this point, but neither materialised. In the centre, the firebase went to work, with the 2 local Russian leaders falling, one to a sniper from the plethora of morale checks, the other to a fate roll. The remaining leader on the right would also soon be gone, not a great start for the Russians. On the left, the scouts encountered and eliminated one of the 45L AT guns and its crew. They also began to see the extensive anti-tank ditch line dividing board 44 in 2. This prompted some early adjustments to the plan, as Phase 4 would not be able to be executed as anticipated. I transferred some assets from the right flank and brought up the last of my reserves to ensure I could reach the final objective in time. By the start of Russian turn 3, the reinforcements were beginning the assault on the second objective. However, the Germans began to encounter the minefields, and a Tiger from the initial assault force was immobilised by the dug-in Churchill. More critically, the German 10 Neg 2 leader was picked out by the Russian sniper, and the firebase went down. There was also clearly a gap in the overall plan, with the taking of buildings in X6 and Y6, and this led to some impetuous play on my part and the loss of one of the very valuable flame tanks. Despite the late successes, Dave was understandably disappointed with things overall at this point, and we called a halt to the first session as it was getting late stateside. In our next session, starting with Russian player turn 3, the tide continued to rise for the Russians, with the assault from the right on buildings X6, Y6 being repulsed. A number of German units broke, including the one guarding prisoners. This later resulted in a melee and tied up the German resources in an unexpected defence of the right buildings. The timetable and sequence of the planned phases 3 and 4 now out the window, Germans consolidated on the right and pushed on with capturing the second and final objectives with the reinforcements and elements of the original firebase. Building S7 fell with the aid of the remaining flame tank, after which it stumbled fatally into an anti-tank minefield. With 2 German AFVs mouthing their main armaments, the Russian KVs arrived to help in attempting to retake the right-hand buildings, with the now rearmed escaped prisoners and the resurrected leader. Cue the remaining mobile Tiger 1. It went to work and eliminated both KVs, effectively ending that counterattack. The far left building also fell to weight of numbers, directly defended by just a half squad. For the last session, victory seemed within reach for the Germans, but there were 5 buildings to take, and the German OB was now spread out and ragged from attrition. I was so wary of the Russian sniper by the end, I was second-guessing every attack roll. There were many crucial moments for both sides in the last turns, and in the end, it came down to one of the 45L AT gun crews managing to get back into Y6 in its last player turn, only to be eliminated by yet another flamethrower shot. The Germans advanced in, and it was all over in the last turn of the game. Dave managed an admirable comeback and made it a real contest after early setbacks. While the odds were still against him in the dying stages, it could have gone either way. For mine, MVP for the Russians goes to the gun crews, especially the crew from the 45L AT in Y4, who nearly ruined it all for the Germans, as well as the escaped prisoners, who derailed my original plan almost single-handedly. On the German side, MVP is a close choice between the Tigers and the captured KVs. As far as the overall scenario is concerned, I feel it can go either way, and success for the Germans rests on their ability to overcome or avoid the static defences and exploit their mobility. In this playing, I feel somewhat lucky to have picked a point in the line with fewer obstacles. For the Russian player, it is hard to manoeuvre within their lines, and any fallback defence is perhaps only possible with careful placement of trenches and AT ditches. Dave's defence in depth was effective, but having seen the outcome of the game, I would try to have a way to withdraw the infantry to a second line in part of the battlefield. I'd certainly be keen to hear from Dave and the other Russian players on this point. Thanks also to Dave and Martin for all their efforts and the scenario designer Chaz Smith for picking this cracker.